Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Kirsten Hanna and I'm the Program Leader for the Master of Human Rights. So in this very short presentation, I'd like to introduce you to that program, what it's all about, who's involved, and what you'll actually gain from it. So let's talk about human rights. Now, if I ask you what human rights you have, I'm pretty sure you could come up with a pretty long list of all of those rights. You know, the right to education, the right to a life free from slavery, the right to an adequate standard of living. But when you ask people to define human rights, to say what they are, well, that's a much harder question to answer because they are difficult to define. So let's just say for now that human rights are things that you're entitled to or you're allowed simply because you're a human being, no matter who you are, where you're from, no matter your ethnicity, no matter your gender, no matter what. So people might disagree over exactly how to define human rights, but they're more likely to agree that they matter. And they matter because human rights are all about protecting the interests and the dignity of us all, as individuals and as groups. Human rights place limits on the power of governments. They impose obligations and duties on governing authorities to uphold our rights, to respect them, to fulfill them. But here's the rub. If everyone everywhere has the right to a life free from slavery, how come so many people are living in conditions of slavery today? And if everyone has the right to adequate housing, how come so many people are homeless or living in substandard housing? The point is that human rights instruments like the UN Declaration of Human Rights or the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, these are just words on paper. So our task is to ensure those words on paper get translated into action. It's about transforming the institutions of society, changing the rules of society, how we engage with each other, to ensure that everyone's human rights are respected, upheld, and fulfilled. So if you want to learn more about human rights, to gain knowledge and skills so that you can engage in that process of turning words into actions, then AUT's Human Rights Program is the place for you. So our program offers a range of degrees. There's the Master of Human Rights, which students can actually finish full-time within a year or a year and a half, depending on the pathway you choose. We also offer a postgraduate diploma and a postgraduate certificate. Now the courses are taught as blocks, and the first one starts in mid-January and the last one ends at the end of November, sort of beginning of December. The courses are taught on campus at AUT's City Campus. So students who enroll in the January intake have the option of full-time or part-time study. But if you enroll in the mid-year intake, that semester we only offer part-time study. But you need to bear in mind that the courses are pretty intensive. So full-time study in our program is not compatible with full-time work. So who can enroll in the program? Well, unlike many other postgraduate programs in human rights, you don't need a law degree to enroll. What you do need is to have done well at bachelor's level, no matter what topic your bachelor's degree was in. So whether it was law, or whether it was social work, or mathematics, or science, or humanities, or Latin, it doesn't matter. You just need to have done well. So to get into the master's, you need a bachelor's level degree with at least a B average in your level 7 papers. For the postgraduate diploma and certificate, you need a bachelor's level degree. But what this means is that our students come from a really wide range of disciplinary and career backgrounds. I mean, some students enroll in our program straight after they finish their undergraduate degree. Others are returning to university after a period of time in the workforce. So past students have included nurses and teachers and trade unionists and police officers and scientists and public servants, social workers, all sorts. And we have students of all ages, from recent graduates to people who finished high school decades ago. And many of our students were born outside Aotearoa. And this diversity in terms of age and culture and experience, this is a huge strength of our program, because students end up learning not just from we lecturers, but from each other through exposure to different worldviews, different beliefs, and different perspectives. So, who are the lecturers and administrators on our program? Well, first up is Associate Professor Jane Verbitsky. And her research really comes in sort of three different flavors. There's three strands to her area of expertise. So one strand of her research focuses on Antarctica, that is the geopolitics and the governance and policy surrounding Antarctica. The second strand focuses on competitive authoritarian democracies, most recently in the context of Botswana in the aftermath of the 2019 general election. And the third area of Jane's research is that sort of nexus between conflict resolution, human rights, and justice, with a particular focus on the institutions of justice and refugee policy. Next up is Associate Professor Love Chile. And Love's focus is primarily on community development, that is, the role of public policy and community transformation, and the relationship between public policy and sustainable community and social transformation. Another area of Love's work is critically re-examining that nexus between international migration and public policy. So this relates to how policies and practices empower refugees and migrants and their communities to engage in action to address marginalization and oppression. As for professional staff, Emily Wu is the administrator for the Human Rights Program. So she's the one that makes sure everything runs smoothly, and she's also the one who can help you with your enrollment. And finally, my research focuses on children's human rights, including the rights of children who testify in the criminal courts. So I have a particular focus on the way children are cross-examined at trial, like the questions they're asked, the tactics that are adopted in cross-examination, and whether this really helps children produce the best quality of evidence of which they're capable. But I've also conducted research on other areas relating to children's rights, like children's child poverty or income transfers for young adults, young parents, and so forth. So just as our research interests are diverse, so are our courses, which look at human rights from a variety of perspectives. So Human Rights in Global Context, the first paper that's actually offered every year, this explores globalization of human rights since 1945. It looks at theories of human rights, but also the evolving role of the United Nations. Human Rights in New Zealand looks at the history of human rights institutions here in Aotearoa. But you'll also explore how well or not so well we've implemented the rights articulated in the core human rights treaties that we've actually ratified as a nation. Special topic focuses on the relationship between migration and employment, both globally and here in Aotearoa. So you'll explore the implications for migrants and refugees' human rights. You'll evaluate the human rights instruments that are supposed to protect those rights and engage in debates on refugee resettlement in Aotearoa. Human rights communication and advocacy introduces students to human rights advocacy. So you'll explore fundamental human rights and also how to develop a human rights campaign to promote awareness of a particular issue and encourage action to address it. You'll also learn how to engage in storytelling as a way of communicating about human rights issues to public audiences. Now, human rights policy and analysis focuses on children's rights, what they are, why they matter, and how public policy or how governments should and could do a much better job of respecting, protecting, and upholding children's human rights. We also offer a course on research methodologies and methods that are appropriate for research within the human rights field. And finally, Master of Human Rights students choose between either doing the applied research project or the dissertation. And that applied research project is a group project. Now, you should be aware that exploring human rights also means looking at violations of human rights. And some of those violations can be distressing. Now, as staff, we take all care to treat these topics with great sensitivity and respect for the dignity of the people involved. But you really need to bear this in mind when deciding whether this program is right for you. But the applied research program, or project, really sits at the heart of the entire program, because it's here that students bring together the knowledge and the skills and the capabilities that they've learned throughout the whole program. They bring this all together to apply to a particular human rights issue as I said, a group project. So you'll work as a group to plan and manage the project, to research the issue, maybe interview some people to find out their views on the topic, and then at the end produce an output in order to communicate what you've actually learned. For example, in 2016, Master of Human Rights students focused on youth homelessness. So they drew on their incredibly diverse skill set to produce a documentary which highlighted or really illustrated the harsh realities of homelessness for youthful people. And the documentary has been shown at a number of film festivals, as well as at the New Zealand Housing Conference. In 2017, students explored another critical issue, and that is, should young people under 17 have the right to vote? I mean, do you think 16 is too young? Or perhaps you think, why shouldn't people under 18 have a say in who governs them? And in 2020, students produced a series of podcasts on how children and young people here in Aotearoa participate in decision-making regarding vaccinations. So students interviewed a group of young people aged between 16 and 24 to hear their views on the topic. And one of the things these young people told them was that they were really proactive in seeking information about vaccinations, but sources of information were often kind of difficult to navigate. So throughout this program, you'll develop a wide range of skills and knowledge, and some of them are listed there on the slide. So you'll learn what human rights are, the history of human rights, the evolution of the United Nations. You'll learn about some of the most important human rights instruments, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, or the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. You'll learn how to communicate effectively about human rights, how to tell people's stories in ways that respect their rights. You'll hone your critical analysis and critical thinking skills, your ability to evaluate information and to work out what's reliable and what's not. And you'll engage in teamwork and problem solving with your peers. And all of these skills are transferable into other domains, other areas. So to sum up, this program was developed because we wanted to support the talent and abilities of people in the community who are really committed to human rights and social justice. The program aims to give you the knowledge and skills you need to understand human rights, but also to apply that knowledge in the community, in your workplace, in your thinking. And that's exactly what many of our graduates have actually done. For example, knowledge of human rights is highly relevant to careers in local government or central government, in human rights institutions like the Children's Commission. They're really relevant to working in non-government organisations or NGOs. And our graduates have moved into positions in many of those places. So some of our students have ended up in Parliament, in various government ministries, in local government, NGOs, human rights institutions, and elsewhere, into positions where they can really draw on what they've learnt and make a difference. So thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, please do post them in the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. And finally, I really hope to see you in 2022 and hope to have the opportunity to welcome you to our program. Ka kite.